Atlantis was never a myth. That's what powerful people want you to think. When you first heard about it, it was placed alongside fairy tales and fantasy, between unicorns and pirate treasure. Not a truth, but a story. Not reality, but curiosity. But what if this story was real? What if Atlantis existed? More importantly, what if it represented a missing link in our spiritual growth? A part of ourselves deliberately hidden, twisted, and buried under centuries of distraction. They told you Atlantis sank into the ocean. They didn't tell you it's been stored in your memory all along, hiding where everyone can see it. Not as a physical place to find, but as a state of mind to remember. This isn't just about lost cities or sunken temples. It's about a forgotten wavelength. If you're reading this, something inside you already knows. The word Atlantis carries a charge, a spark of something ancient, powerful, and strangely familiar. You know the story. A mighty civilization with great knowledge and power, destroyed in one day and night. This version comes from Plato, who lived over 2,000 years ago. Most people dismiss his account as just a lesson or warning tale. But what if it wasn't? What if Plato wasn't creating Atlantis, but remembering it? In his writings, Plato claimed the story came from Egyptian priests through Solon, one of Athens' wisest lawmakers. They described a continent beyond the Strait of Gibraltar, a place more advanced than any known at the time, that grew in power and fell due to corruption. Instead of believing Plato, generations of scholars called it just a story meant to teach philosophical ideas. Ask yourself, why would one of history's most respected thinkers include such specific details in something meant only as fiction? Plato wasn't vague. He described Atlantis precisely, its geography, buildings, social structure, and values. He called it a land built on divine order, where spiritual and material life existed in balance. He also described its downfall, not from outside forces, but from within. Greed replaced virtue. Ego overtook wisdom. The imbalance between spiritual power and human corruption led to its end. This isn't just history, it's a warning. But Plato wasn't alone. Look worldwide and you'll find echoes of Atlantis everywhere. Mayans told stories of a lost land called Alan that vanished beneath the sea. Hindu texts mention an advanced civilization called Kumari Kandam, swallowed by the ocean. Pacific Islanders speak of Lemuria, another ancient place lost to time. Early Egyptian records hint at a forgotten era before dynastic Egypt, a golden age that mysteriously disappeared. These aren't coincidences. They're pieces of a worldwide memory buried under layers of conquest and ridicule. There's a reason these stories follow the same pattern. An enlightened civilization that fell when it lost connection with its spiritual core. We're not talking about myths. We're talking about memory, collective memory passed through stories because history books wouldn't include them. But why hide it? Because Atlantis represents more than a city. It shows human capability, what we once achieved and could become again. For those in power, nothing seems more dangerous than people who remember their true strength. Some knowledge is too sensitive for public platforms. That's why we created a free newsletter where we share what can't be said here. Join using the link below and get a free copy of the Kybalion while it's still available. Standard history shows time as a straight line, as if we're always moving forward. But what if that's false? What if we've been here before, technologically advanced, spiritually connected, living in ways modern society can't even understand? What if, through pride and imbalance, everything fell apart? What if our modern world with all its screens and systems is just a shadow of what Atlantis once was? If you've ever looked around and felt something important is missing, something deep and ancient, You're not imagining it. That feeling, that yearning, pulls you back to a truth you've always known, even if nobody told you about it. It's not about looking back with fondness. It's about remembering. Because Atlantis isn't just a story about the past. It reflects the present. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. We've learned to view technology as something external. Wires, machines, cold metals designed for speed and convenience. But Atlantean technology was completely different. It wasn't built to control or distract. It was built for harmony. Atlantean technology was spiritual by nature. You didn't use it. You tuned into it. It created resonance between matter and mind, a connection between physical and divine. Picture a society where energy wasn't taken from the earth through destruction, but channeled through intention. Where temples weren't just worship places, but frequency chambers amplifying sound, light, and vibration to balance the soul. Where crystals weren't decorative items but living tools, conscious instruments designed to store information, conduct energy, and help with healing and evolution. According to many mystical teachings, Atlantis developed high spiritual science that combined consciousness with technology. They knew how to direct energy through sound vibrations, sacred geometry, and the natural properties of stones. Pyramids cut with laser precision weren't tombs, they were power stations. Obelisks weren't monuments, they were tuning forks. Crystals, especially clear quartz and others found abundantly in Atlantean lands, reportedly powered entire cities, not with fossil fuels or wires, but through harmonic resonance and light. These weren't myths. They were advanced forms of frequency manipulation, thousands of years ahead of modern science. Sound was central. They understood that the universe is vibration, and that everything, thought, emotion, body, planet, has a frequency. Using specific tones, they could change consciousness states, heal diseases, and even make objects float. Ancient Sanskrit texts describe mantras that change reality. Egyptian temples echo with chants that balance energy centers. Tibetan singing bowls still carry remnants of this ancient knowledge. Atlantis didn't invent these truths. It remembered them. But over time, as ego took root and power became more important than purpose, this knowledge was misused. What was once sacred became corrupted. Crystals once programmed for healing were turned toward control. Sound once used to uplift was twisted into manipulation. Some sources suggest that in Atlantis's final era, the very tools that elevated their consciousness ultimately destabilized it. They tried to force energy to obey will rather than work with wisdom. That imbalance, that misuse of sacred technology, sped up their collapse. This isn't fantasy. It mirrors today. We hold devices that pulse with frequencies we barely understand. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, 5G, all invisible vibrations moving through our bodies and homes daily. We're surrounded by frequencies yet disconnected from the wisdom that once guided them. Atlantean tech didn't rely on code or screens. It was organic, living in sync with Earth's rhythms and the cosmos. This knowledge was buried because it threatens everything we've been told to believe. If you knew your body was a frequency device, your voice could heal, your mind could direct energy. How would that change your life? The Atlanteans weren't gods. They were humans who remembered. And we're just starting to remember again. This isn't about crystals on shelves or sound baths for relaxation. This is about waking up what sleeps inside you. The technology of Atlantis wasn't built. It existed within people. And the more we drift from our inner world, the more we forget that real power doesn't come from tools, but from the consciousness behind them. Atlantis didn't fall because of natural disaster. That's the shallow version history uses. Yes, ancient texts mention earthquakes, floods, and the island sinking beneath the sea. But that was just the final scene. The real collapse started long before the earth shook, when people's spirits trembled. What caused Atlantis to fall wasn't nature. It was power misused, a spiritual decay. A civilization that once lived in harmony with higher laws began to crack from within. For thousands of years, Atlantis was supposedly a beacon of divine connection. People lived according to cosmic order, their technology guided by wisdom, their leaders chosen not for ambition, but for pure hearts. They remembered that everything, government, science, spirituality, must serve the soul. But over time, cracks appeared. Curiosity turned to arrogance. Self-study gave way to control obsession. The Atlanteans, once humble co-creators with nature, began to think they could dominate it. The spiritual elite, the priest kings, scientists, sages, split into factions. Some still followed light. Others turned inward, corrupted by manipulation, ego, and separation. It wasn't a traditional war. It was an energy split, a divide between higher consciousness and lower desire. Once that division took root, it spread rapidly. Advanced technology once used to heal and uplift was turned towards surveillance, weapons, and power hoarding. The energy balance that held Atlantis together began to fail. Earth responded not with anger, but with inevitability. When spiritual foundation crumbles, the physical world follows. In Edgar Cayce's readings, he described two Atlantean groups, the sons of the law of one and the sons of Belial. One group upheld unity, divine connection, and service to others. The other embraced materialism, self-interest, and life force manipulation for personal gain. That tension built over centuries until it finally tipped everything over. The destruction wasn't one act of anger, but the end result of an energy imbalance that couldn't sustain itself. Here's the uncomfortable part. Their story mirrors ours. Look around. We live in an age of immense power, yet we're more disconnected than ever from the soul of that power. We've made technological wonders, but forgotten the wisdom to guide them. We manipulate energy, time, biology, yet our mental health crumbles. Our connection to nature fades, and our understanding of spirit is either mocked or commercialized. Sound familiar? Atlantis isn't just a lost city under the ocean. It reflects the choice we face now. We stand on the same edge. We face the same temptation to use consciousness to control rather than serve, to build rather than cooperate, to dominate rather than co-create. The same rift grows between those who remember unity and those chasing control illusion. That's why Atlantis gets labeled myth. Because if we took it seriously, if we truly understood what it meant, we'd have to look in the mirror. It would show us that what happened before can happen again, and that we, right now, decide which version of history repeats. Atlantis's fall wasn't punishment. It was consequence, the result of a civilization forgetting its power source, a society that reached incredible heights because it remembered itself, and fell because it chose to forget. The warning isn't ancient, it's timeless. And it's not about fear, it's about choice. History gets written by those who benefit from forgetting. With Atlantis, forgetting wasn't accidental, it was planned. What if the story wasn't buried by time but by design? What if Atlantean knowledge didn't just vanish under the sea, but was deliberately hidden to keep humanity unaware? Because Atlantis doesn't just challenge historical timelines, it challenges how we see ourselves. After the fall, Atlantis survivors supposedly scattered globally, not as refugees but as knowledge carriers. They brought fragments of what once existed, sacred sciences, star knowledge, spiritual practices that once guided a society connected to divine law. These survivors didn't disappear into history. They became its hidden architects. They founded Egypt's mystery schools, encoded knowledge into temples, pyramids, and oral traditions. They didn't announce it publicly. They concealed it in symbols, stories, and structures that only awakened people would understand. Look at ancient Egypt's architecture, pyramid precision, hieroglyph symbolism, monument alignment with star patterns. These weren't primitive society products. They were echoes of a forgotten past, Atlantean fingerprints in stone. The Sphinx, facing the spring equinox sunrise, is older than we're told. Scholars note its water erosion doesn't match its official age. This matters because if the timeline is wrong, so is the entire historical story we've built upon it. Egyptian priests knew. Mystery school initiates trained to remember, not just intellectually but spiritually. They worked with vibration, color, geometry, breath. They didn't worship gods. They studied laws, universal laws governing energy, thought, manifestation, consciousness. The very laws Atlanteans once lived by before forgetting. Then came the change. Empires rose, religions formed, bringing control. Power concentrated not through knowledge but through doctrine. Libraries burned, teachings twisted. Those who remembered were hunted as heretics, witches, or madmen. The Roman Empire, the Church, colonial powers, they didn't just conquer land, they conquered memory. What couldn't be erased was relabeled as myth. Atlantis became fantasy, Lemuria, a fairy tale, Hermetic teachings diluted into superstition. Esoteric traditions were destroyed or driven underground. The wisdom never vanished. It was hidden, in symbols, in language, in plain sight, and most of all, in you. Because the biggest cover-up wasn't in books or temples. It happened in human consciousness. If you convince people they're ordinary, fragile, and disconnected from source, they'll never ask real questions. They'll never seek what's buried inside them. They'll chase answers in external systems instead of inner knowing. That's the trap, working for centuries. But cracks form. People wake up, remembering things never taught, drawn to symbols, sounds, stories they can't explain. They feel called not to believe in Atlantis, but to remember it. When enough people remember, the story can't hold. This isn't about rewriting history for curiosity. It's about reclaiming your birthright. Atlantis isn't just an ancient story. It's a missing piece of your spiritual identity. It was hidden not to protect you from truth, but to protect systems from you discovering it. Not everyone will feel it, but those who do, who never quite felt they belonged, who always sensed something deeper beneath life's surface, often carry something ancient within them, something older than this lifetime, older than this world as we know it. Atlantis memory doesn't just live in books or ruins. It lives in people. And if you found your way here, it might live in you. Some people walk through life with a persistent feeling that something's missing. Not material things, but spiritual ones. You've tried following society's script, school, job, chase the dream. But the dream felt empty, disconnected, like a life designed for someone else. That yearning isn't a flaw. It's a signal, a quiet pulse from your past self reaching across time to remind you that you've been here before. Many spiritual traditions speak of reincarnated Atlanteans, souls from Atlantis's height and fall, now returning to raise consciousness and prevent humanity from repeating the cycle. These aren't fantasies for the spiritually curious. They're messages for the spiritually awake. You're not drawn to ancient wisdom by chance. You're remembering it. You're attracted to crystals, energy work, ancient symbols, sacred geometry. Not because it's trendy, but because your soul recognizes how to work with them. You might notice your sensitivity, feeling others' emotions intensely, sensing energy in rooms, seeing through deception instinctively, finding shallow conversation exhausting. The world often calls this too much. But what if it's the opposite? What if you're not too much but more awake than most? That heightened sensitivity isn't weakness. It shows ancient memory. Atlanteans were deeply attuned to frequency, emotion, and intuition. You're not broken. You're remembering. Perhaps you've always felt drawn to ancient civilizations, sacred places, or symbols that glow in your mind without knowing why. These aren't coincidences. They're imprints. The more you follow them, the more they wake up what lies dormant. Dreams that feel like memories. Skills never learned but somehow understood. Truths that resonate through your entire body, even when nobody around you understands. You don't need outside proof of who you are. The knowing comes from within. It always has. Reincarnated Atlanteans aren't superior. They're not meant to lead cults or start religions. Their role is subtle but vital. They heal, seek truth, disrupt systems, feel deeply and question everything. Their presence on Earth now isn't random. As consciousness changes, they're being activated, quietly, powerfully, collectively. Their mission isn't to rebuild Atlantis physically, but in frequency, to embody the harmony between spirit and matter that once defined that civilization, and remind others that this consciousness level isn't lost. It's just been forgotten. You don't need a label. You don't need permission. You don't even need certainty. If any part of this speaks to you, if it reaches somewhere deeper than words, then you already know. You don't remember through thinking. You remember through resonance. And if your whole being leans forward now, it's not curiosity. It's recognition. You're not here accidentally. You didn't find this message. You answered it. Atlantis's legacy isn't behind you. It's waking up inside you. Every seeker reaches a point when the question changes. It's no longer, was Atlantis real? But, what if I've carried it all along? At first, it's subtle, a lingering dream, a strangely familiar conversation, attraction to stars, ancient texts, frequencies and teachings. Your logical mind can't explain, but your soul instantly understands. That's not imagination. That's remembrance. The Atlantean mind doesn't wake through knowledge. It wakes through vibration. In Atlantis, mind wasn't separate from soul. Intellect and intuition worked together. Thought served consciousness, not trapped it. To wake the Atlantean mind today means reclaiming that unity. Remembering your consciousness isn't limited by this world. Atlanteans understood what modern science now rediscovers. Mind isn't produced by the brain. It's a field, a frequency, a bridge between visible and invisible. That bridge remains within you. Whenever you meditate and feel awareness expand beyond your body, you step back into that frequency. Whenever you match breath with intention, use sound to change your state. Choose stillness over noise. You reconnect with a way of being that's been suppressed, ridiculed, and forgotten, but never lost. It lives in your biology, energy field, knowing. You don't wake the Atlantean mind by trying harder. You wake it by tuning in. Stillness becomes a doorway. Breath becomes a code. Movement becomes memory. The more you clear what was programmed into you, limitation, fear, separation, the more space you make for what was always there. What returns isn't information, it's resonance. You start remembering how to listen without hearing, see without looking, feel without needing to explain. Atlantean consciousness was expansive. It didn't seek power over others, but harmony within. Each person was seen as a point in a greater energy web, connected to each other, the earth, stars, and the source of all life. Human experience wasn't separate from the divine. It was a pathway to it. Waking the Atlantean mind today means choosing to live from that knowing. Remembering your thoughts shape frequency, emotions sculpt reality, and beliefs act as tuning forks for the world you experience. It's not always comfortable. As old programs fall away, you might feel unsteady. Friends may drift. Passions may change. You may no longer tolerate noise you once lived with. That's part of it. You're not breaking down. You're breaking through. The Atlantean path isn't linear. It spirals, loops, tests, but each return brings you deeper into truth. You're not here to escape the world. You're here to change it, to bring light where confusion exists, to embody remembrance so fully that others begin to feel it without you saying a word. That's how the Atlantean mind spreads, not through force but through frequency, not through preaching but through presence. It starts with a simple question whispered through time. What if I already know? If Atlantis were just a myth, nobody would care whether you believed it. No institutions would dismiss it. No scholars would scoff so aggressively. No systems would keep you distracted from it. But they do. That should tell you something. Erasing Atlantis isn't about fantasy. It's about fear. Not yours, but theirs. Because remembering Atlantis doesn't just rewrite ancient history. It rewrites your identity. It wakes something, making you unpredictable, free. And free minds resist control. The modern world keeps you from remembering. You're surrounded by distractions, flooded with information, but starved of wisdom. From waking, your mind gets pulled outward. Notifications, headlines, deadlines, endless noise. It's not random, it's designed. Keep people busy and they won't ask deeper questions. Keep them entertained and they won't seek truth. Keep them consuming and they won't remember what they came to create. The system isn't just physical, it's psychological. You've learned to view reality through a narrow lens shaped by media, education, and institutions benefiting from your memory loss. You've been told to trust only what can be measured, bought, and explained. Everything else, intuition, energy, ancient memory, gets labeled delusion. You're not crazy for feeling there's more. You're conditioned to think you're crazy for saying it aloud. The truth is, Atlantis knowledge never vanished. It was hidden under layers of ridicule. That's how they bury power, not by destroying it, but by discrediting it. The reason is simple. If enough people remember what Atlantis truly was, the current system can't survive. This system thrives on separation, from Earth, from each other, from your inner knowing. Atlantis built on the opposite, unity, coherence, spiritual independence. That's the threat. What happens when people remember they don't need permission to access truth? That their body is a temple, intuition is intelligence, and thoughts are creative forces. What happens when people realize they aren't consumers in a machine but co-creators in a living universe? The system collapses, not through violence, but through irrelevance. Once you reclaim your power, you stop outsourcing it. This is why potent truths often hide in plain sight, disguised as fiction or fantasy. It's easier to dismiss something than defend against its awakening. That's why Atlantis became a bedtime story. If people saw it for what it really was, a mirror of who we once were and could be again, it would ignite something uncontrollable. We live in an age of incredible information and profound ignorance. We know how to split atoms, but not how to sit quietly. We build machines that think faster than us, but forget how to feel. Yet beneath all noise, memory still pulses. In dreams, in coincidences, in that persistent feeling that you're here for more than just surviving and repeating someone else's idea of success. Today's greatest rebellion is remembering. Not just facts kept from you, but the feeling, the frequency, how your entire being brightens when truth enters the room. That's not just curiosity. That's coded memory activating. The more you remember, the less they control. Not because you fight them, but because you no longer feed them. Atlantis threatens the system by reminding you of your true nature. It shows that a civilization connecting spirit and science, heart and mind, isn't just possible. It existed before. Once remembered, it can exist again, not through governments or institutions, but through individuals. One mind at a time. Atlantis wasn't meant to be a memory. It was meant to be a blueprint, not for buildings or technology, but for consciousness, for how we live, create, connect. It was a time when inner and outer worlds mirrored each other harmoniously, a civilization built not on dominance, but cooperation. While structures may be gone, the pattern remains. The code never vanished. It waited for the right frequency to activate again. Now it wakes through us. You might wonder how a place lost to history could return. But Atlantis's return isn't physical. It's vibrational. It's not about land rising from the sea. It's about awareness rising in the soul. The Atlantean frequency isn't a map to follow, but a state to embody. Right now, more than ever, that choice presents itself. Not in grand events, but in quiet moments, daily decisions, internal shifts, how you treat yourself and others. That's how the new Atlantis begins, not in discovered ruins, but in reborn consciousness. The old world teaches looking outside for answers, measuring progress by speed, production, performance. But the Atlantean path differs. It's slower, deeper. It asks you to turn inward, to feel, to question inheritances, to step from noise back into knowing. That's not easy, because everything around you, systems, screens, schedules, keeps you distracted from that path. But distraction isn't destiny. It's a test. When you choose differently, listening to the quiet voice instead of the loud one, you connect with Atlantis's frequency, and you won't be alone. That's remembrance's beauty. It spreads. One awakened person mirrors others. You needn't teach or preach. Living truthfully gives others permission to do the same. The new Atlantis isn't built with stone. It's built with presence, intention, integrity. Communities form around consciousness, not convenience. People gather not around shared opinions, but shared energy. This is the Atlantean legacy moving. The return is subtle. It doesn't shout. It hums. You feel it in growing desires. To live authentically, slow down, connect deeply, question everything manufactured. That's the pull, the remembering, the change from a control world to a coherence world. You matter greatly in this story. You transmit living frequency. Whenever you choose love over fear, curiosity over judgment, intuition over instruction, you tune in to the Atlantean current. The more of us who do, the stronger that current grows, until it's no longer a whisper from the past, but a presence in the now. Atlantis was never just about our origins. It's about our possibilities. Now more than ever, the door stands open, but nobody pushes you through. This awakening isn't forced. It's invited. You choose. The new Atlantis doesn't rise by itself. It rises when we remember who we are and live as if we never forgot. We've traveled through time, memory, and myth. Now comes the only part that truly matters: what you do with it. Because this isn't just about Atlantis. It's about you. Your role in reawakening something the world tried to forget but couldn't destroy. Atlantis doesn't live in underwater ruins. It lives in quiet choices made when nobody watches. It lives in integrity held when the world pulls you from yourself. It lives in how you remember what life truly means. You're not here just to survive, check boxes, or fit into structures not built for your thriving. You're here to build something else, something ancient yet completely new, a way of living honoring soul as much as mind. A path valuing inner harmony over outer validation, a life that doesn't chase success but redefines it. Success in this new world isn't accumulation, it's coherence, peace, purpose, presence. That's what Atlantis' return really means, not a city resurfacing from the ocean, but a frequency resurfacing in daily life. You are the temple now. Your body, mind, spirit are the tools. The more you harmonize them, the more you remember. Every conscious breath, every clear word, every truth-rooted act builds the new Atlantis, one needn't find because it's being created. But remember, this path isn't passive. Knowing the story isn't enough. Knowing just starts the process. You must live it, speak it, embody it. The world doesn't need more information. It needs more living examples of what's possible when we wake up. That's your power. That's your invitation. You're not waiting for change. You are the change. If you've read this far, you're ready to go deeper. You were never meant to forget yourself. You were never meant to shrink, doubt, or trade your light for comfort. You were born to remember, to carry this ancient pulse into a modern world that badly needs it. You bridge what was and what could be. Every choice you make from now sends ripples through everyone. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for the world to catch up. The remembrance path belongs to those brave enough to leave the familiar behind and follow something deeper. Atlantis isn't a destination. It's a remembering. Now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. If this video connected with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood."